Well, hello and welcome to Code3 Conversations. I am CC Strong and I would like to welcome you. And I'm so glad to have you here watching the Code3 Conversations. We have some great things planned for you today, but first I want to lay a few ground rules. We use the riots method. Yes, you've heard that correctly. But the riots method in this sense is in a positive way. We ask that you be respectful. We ask that you have integrity. We ask that you are open minded because we all have an opinion and something to share. We ask that you be truthful in anything that you share. If you decide to come on over as a panelist, raise your hand and join the discussion. We welcome it. And lastly, we want you to share from your heart. Law enforcement and community are constantly doing this. It's a polarized situation where people point and say, well, he should have just complied. Or you hear, I pay your salary. And then there's this feuding back and forth, but no one really sits down and has these type of conversations. Well, we've decided that there are times for these Code 3 conversations. You'll see black and whites right rolling down the street. We call them that. The police cars and the sirens are spinning, and we're in a hurry to get to whatever emergency call. I think that that emergency is with these conversations. We don't hear each other. We don't communicate across the lines. And I just happen to be from the community and a community that is always in headlines, straight out of Compton. Yes, proud of it. I don't have a problem with saying that. And I have spent the last 30 years in law enforcement because for me, it was about being part of the solution and not just a part of the problem. While all the noise is swirling around, I like being the right there in the mix, trying to make a difference. And I'd like to say that I did. Well, joining me is, and you may see someone's name that looks familiar, is my own husband. His name is Eric Strong, and he has 32 years in law enforcement, four different agencies, mind you. And he has a plethora of knowledge in this area. So between us, there's 62 years. But we also grew up in areas and neighborhoods where we saw things that we weren't always in agreement with. So, in uniform and out, we know that it is important to have the dialogues. We thank you for actually being here, and we look forward to you actually continuing with us on this mission. So, in order to get started, I'm going to switch over and get us started on our first topic. Eric, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do
Awesome.
it.
Let's do it. So, Code 3 Conversations, like I said, is the dialogue. I hope that you brought your snacks and, like me, bring something to drink. This is not a stiff session where you're going to hear us talking like we're newscasters. You're going to hear some bantering. You might actually hear some laughter. You might actually have us ribbing each other on certain things. It's supposed to be lighthearted. We're looking for change. We've had topics from accountability to needing more training in law enforcement to actually having more compassion when dealing with people on the streets. And today we have four topics. Hopefully, we get to all of them for you. And we would love your feedback. Feel free to type in the chat or ask a question. You can even raise your hand if you decide I want in on that conversation. So, last session, Eric was taking us through basically applicant A and applicant B when coming into law enforcement. And from my recollection, Eric, you were saying that one applicant probably had it pretty easy in life. So it made it easy with the application. Their parents may have given them some credit. They've actually added them to their credit cards. It was something to that effect. So they were the first candidate. And then there was the candidate that actually grew up with some struggles, maybe a single parent home, decided to use their money and help their little sister go to the prom. Who was more responsible? And so I'm going to let you kind of let me know if I'm in the right space and if I've gotten that right.
You're absolutely right. And what I'll just say to that is that, what we're looking at is paper credentials, paper qualifications. What does your credit report look like? What do your transcripts look like? And that's really what we're looking at. And we're not really digging into how or why those either accomplishments or lack thereof occurred, which I think is extremely important to know. But to your point, yes, you were pretty much on point with the way you were describing it.
Love it. And in essence, it's the hiring process overall. The other day, I was watching because we're now in another session of people wanting to become the top sheriff for LA County Sheriff's Department. I'm not even going to go down that road of my whole background with you running and the backlash that came from all of that. However, one of the candidates was speaking about the hiring process. And in essence, he's saying, well, back in the day, they would actually just tell family members, hey, you should go and apply. But in my opinion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, tell me if you're thinking similar, doesn't that just keep the same cycle going that my sons, daughters, sons, whatever, that cronyism, nepotism, whichever those isms, which there are a lot of them, that just kind of keeps that same cycle going. Do you agree, or am I overthinking it? Is it a reach?
No, 100%. That's the epitome of nepotism and cronyism. If I can only, if we're only hiring my uncle, my nephew, my son's best friend in high school that I coached football and I knew the kid, yeah, that's the epitome of that, cronyism.
Yeah, and the hiring process needs to be revamped. This is just my opinion because of applicants having to have a certain standard. But I used to, and I could be wrong in this, but I remember someone who worked probation sharing with me that they had a kind of a checkered or colorful past. And it made them a little more aware of the people that they were dealing with. Like they could empathize. And we talked about that in one of the episodes about apathy, sympathy, empathy. They could empathize because they had some challenges themselves. So it was a little bit different than just, hey, I'm the authority. I've gone through this training and now I can actually tell you what to do. Sometimes experiences happen and help. Me growing up in the area that I did was huge for my position because I had a different understanding of, wait a minute, I lived in this neighborhood. I knew what it was like to watch my brother. One particular time, they were looking for a guy in a blue van. My dad owned a blue van. All of a sudden, my brother comes down the street like he would normally, driving my dad's van. He parks in front of the house. He gets out of the car and black and white swoop on him. They put him face down on the grass. They're yelling at him, screaming that he's confused. My dad's upset. My mother's upset. We're upset. I'm a kid. And I'm like, what's going on? Now, mind you, years later, I'm a law enforcement officer, so I know that sometimes, hey, there's a suspect. He's in the same type of van. Maybe a little person was hurt. It's fitting the description properly, not just saying that and using that as a tool. But that was traumatic for me as a kid, seeing that. And I didn't understand it. Years later, I might have understood that. But it was a lot because there were excessive amounts of people that were there instantly in uniform, and it was a little bit scary. Depending on what your experiences are in a hiring process, I would think that it would lend something to the position. I'd like to think that that helped me in certain situations to be a little more compassionate. I could be wrong, could be
I'll tell you
right.
this. One of the things that I said, and we said it last time, that law enforcement deals with is they typically deal with people that are in adverse situations.
Hmm.
The majority of our calls are we are responding to something. We are responding to a traffic accident. We are responding to somebody coming home and finding that their house had been burglarized. We are responding to a domestic violence incident. We are responding to somebody having been harmed, hurt in some kind of way, be it physically or through tangible items being taken. But all of it it creates an emotional type of injury and trauma as well. So if you're bringing somebody that's never had to deal with that, and here's what I say oftentimes is, let's talk about Compton because you brought it up. That's where you lived. I worked at Century Station, Willowbrook, Firestone, Linwood, covers areas of Watts. I worked at Lenox Station. You worked at Lenox Station, covers South LA, the Vermont area, Athens. The reality of it is if we're bringing in people that have never even been to those communities until were assigned there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? What kind of compassion, what kind of shared experience do they have with those communities? And I'm looking, and we all have these things called phones. So do me a favor, you can use your own phone. And here's what I typed in: demographics of law enforcement. That's all I typed. And
Mm.
here's what came up. The demographics of US police officers show they are overwhelmingly male, around 85 to 88%, and
Okay, I'm
white.
taking notes. I'm taking notes. Grab notes,
Okay.
people. Help me out here. What did you
Male,
say
I'll
now?
repeat it, male around 85 to 88%, and white around 70 to 73%. So what does that tell you? Male whites dominate the field, right? And that doesn't mean that the rest of the other 30%, let's get with are black. It doesn't mean that they're Latino. It means the rest of the 30% is everybody. So when you're talking about we only want to hire our family members, we only want to hire, then what are we doing? We're excluding large groups of people, cronyism, nepotism. And if we only want to hire these family members that have never been in these communities, and we're bringing in to deal with people in some of the most, I mean, let's face it, not only is it typically in adverse situations, but oftentimes it's the most excruciating thing that you will ever face when you're dealing with law enforcement. I mean, many people go through life with no contact ever with law enforcement. Maybe some pleasantries, maybe some hellos in a coffee shop or walking down the street or in a shopping center. But if you're calling the police, 99.9% of the time, something is wrong,
Absolutely.
right? Or if the police are coming, 99.9% of the time, something's wrong. So if you're bringing people to the table that don't look like you, didn't grow up where you grew up, have no shared experience with you, and now they're seeing you react in a highly charged emotional way. They don't know what that means. They don't
Yeah.
know what that is. And can it cause fear in people? Sure. Especially if they've been trained to say, hey, watch those people, watch the hands, they're dangerous. So, yeah, I think that we need people. 23 years old, I was being sent into homes and saying, hey, go deal with this domestic violence incident. Go deal with this domestic dispute. I'm not even married. I don't have any kids. And I'm given 10 or 15 minutes to go deal with a problem that a couple's probably had for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot to it that needs to be really have those layers of the onion peeled back.
Yeah. And so the hiring process overall probably needs an overhaul in the way that you're looking at candidates, the background process, the weed out, the disqualifications. I can remember at a unit where I was working, and one of the people that was a personnel staff, they were primarily, that was their job, hiring and, tracking the hiring process, the testing, the examination, the interview. And I kept seeing all these disqualifications. And I'm getting the report and I'm like, well, there's 3 on this page disqualified, and then there's 2 on this page. I literally take this packet, true story, take the packet to that person and I say, what are the reasons behind these disqualifications? I randomly picked one on one page and one on another page. And I said, I want to call these people and see, what happened or what's, just to talk to them, kind of get an idea, right? Because she found out, let me back up, that it was the disqualification because they rejected or refused the position. That was basically what she gave me. Calling those 2 people, stay with me here, at random, selecting 2 off of that packet list. Each one of those candidates said that they had not received a callback. How did I reject a job position and I didn't even receive a call back to actually have a conversation with you to reject it? You think that's a broken system and a broken way that we're doing the hiring process? And if your statistics are in alignment and their thought process is, hey, I just go and tell my cousin and now he's a shoe in for the position, that weeds out a whole lot of people and the ability to have others available, even the thought of having other people. And I'm here screaming, please, people who grew up in areas like me, please go and be a part of that solution. And then I'm on both sides of that. It's like, yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with that because you hear it. Like, I don't even want to apply. And I'm like, apply in droves. Let them try to weed out 50 people all at once. It probably will never happen. And that's a big sacrifice when people are trying to go through that application process. Craziness. If those of you who are watching, if you're interested in learning about the rest of this, because this is an actual continuation from our last episode. So you can go back and actually watch the other ones, and you can hear where Eric tells the story of the first candidate and the second one. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and click over and move to the next topic on the table. And that is, we're decompressing and we're going to, let me see, we're going to actually get into the minds of the community members. That's what this next topic is. So imagine you're a community member and you need to get into their minds, Eric. What is your thought process on that? I'm going to toss that one to you.
I'm a community member and I need to get into the minds of law enforcement, right?
Mhm.
I would want to tell, I would want to, number one, understand from their perspective, like, what is it that you see when you see people? What is it that you feel when you see people? Because here's what I know, having been on both sides, and you talked about experiences, hey, I grew up in LA County, and I tell you, I had negative experiences with law enforcement. It's not uncommon. I even had them after becoming a police officer, and maybe I'm in civilian
Mm.
clothes and they don't know. So I would be like, what is it that you see that makes you react to people in such a way? What is it that creates this us versus them? And why are you like that? And why is it that you don't realize that you too live somewhere and you come from a community? And the first example that comes to mind is um, I had gone into a store, did some shopping, and I came out and my vehicle was gone. And, at the time I had one of those very, very high popular theft vehicles, right? It was, kind of like the Honda Accord thing. It wasn't a Honda Accord, but it was like one of those vehicles that's one of the most common stolen vehicles. And I was in a particular city. I won't say any names because I don't want to impugn anybody, but I was in Culver City. I mean, I'm sorry, did I say that? Um, I was at Marshall's by the Fox Hills Mall, right? That's where I was. And so anyway, I come out and hey, my car is gone. So I call the police and the police get there. Now I'm a police officer. I had been a police officer probably 2 or 3 years, right? Not a real senior guy, but I had been around for a minute. I had done a whole lot of stolen vehicle reports. So they get there and they're asking me, and they're looking around and there's glass, like where I said I parked my vehicle. And so they're asking me, well, okay, what are you doing over here? I look at them and I hold up the bags. I was in the store shopping.
Shopping.
Oh, do you regularly come over here to shop? I said, well, what does that mean? And so I get it that they're, part of the questioning on a CHP 180, which is the form that we use to fill out vehicle theft and or vehicle recovery, and we use that form to enter the vehicle into the system. There are some of those questions like, have you, is your car about to be repossessed? Do you have all the keys? I had the keys. So they're asking me these questions, but none of them are getting out the form and starting to fill it out. And one of them just asked me, so, that's a pretty new vehicle. How do you afford that? I said, do me a favor. I said, why don't you just get out the CHP 180 and fill it out and put my car in the system? Why are you
Mm.
asking me all these questions? And he looked at me like, well, how do you know that's what the form is? I said, because I do the same job you do every day. And he says, well, why didn't you tell me? Why do I have to?
Mm.
Why do I have to tell you that I do your job? Or why do I have to tell you how to do your job for you to just treat? I am a victim. My car got stolen. I'm stranded right now. Do your job. Just do your job. And, so from the mind of the community, I have a shared experience, and I'm sure, and I can tell you that That doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't, and I'm telling you, it doesn't happen to everybody. You know, I'll just tell you one more quick one. Can I tell you one more? Or
Yes, please. I'm
I'm in
listening.
Beverly
I'm
Hills. I
laser
have some
focused.
friends. I have some friends
Uh-huh.
in town from out of state, and of course, they want to go to Beverly Hills and go shop on Rodeo Drive, and so I take them there, and we go into this little shop that has a bunch of crystal and little trinkets and things like that, and they're walking around, and they're actually down. It's like a store that has a lot of wedding stuff, and they were about to get married, so they were there shopping for some wedding invitations. So as they're
Mhm.
shopping and they're sitting with the lady putting together, I'm walking around looking, and I notice a guy start following me. And as he's following me, I know who he is. Again, I've been a cop probably 3 or 4 years, and he's loss prevention. And I
Mm.
know he's everywhere I turn, and sometimes I would turn around real quick and run into him. And as I'm watching him, I literally see this lady put things in her purse. Now he's busy watching me. Why do you think he's watching me? Why do you think he's so intent and focused on me, the only black guy in the store, the one
Mm.
walking around without a bag? I have nothing in my hands. But in his mind, in his training, I am the one you got to watch out for. And I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real. This is not a dig on any particular person, gender, race, but the white woman with blonde hair, with a large handbag and sunglasses on, I saw her put about two or three things in her purse.
Mm.
And I turned to the guy and I said, "You're watching the wrong person." Of course, he said, I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm just shopping. I don't know. I said, "Okay." I said, "You're watching the wrong person." And again, I see her put something else in her purse. I said, "Dude, she's the one that you might want to be looking at." And he's like, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Okay." So I went around, I turned a corner, and I reached in my pocket. I pulled out my ID and I showed him my badge. I said, "Dude, you don't need to worry about me. That
Mm.
lady right there just put about three or four things in her purse." And he now starts, "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do it. I didn't do it." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, here's what you got. You probably got about 30 seconds to a minute before she walks out the door with your stuff, and you got to figure out what you want to do with me." And he's just like nervous as all get out. And finally, he decides to go and talk to that lady. And he does detain her, and they do fine for. And I was even shocked. She was picking up little things about this big, little crystal glass things, and at the time, I mean, we're talking about in the 90s, it was about $6,000 worth of stuff that she had put in her purse.
Mm.
And I go to this community. I'm a community member. Why are you following me? You're missing something. And even when I'm telling you you're missing something, you can't get out of your own, ideology and believe that I may not be the suspect, that somebody that doesn't look like me could be the bad person. So, that's in the mind. That's what I would want law enforcement to know, from the mind or in the minds of community members. Why are you treating us like this? What did
Yeah,
we do? What did I do? And are there bad people out there? Yep, absolutely.
absolutely.
But
And
you can't just,
you
no, I
can't
was going to say,
assume.
well, you can't just say that because I arrested one black man for doing something bad that now I got to watch all black men. You can't even say I've arrested 10 black men for doing black things. So now I got to watch, because especially if you're working in certain cities where the population there and the demographic is there is primarily black, well then of course, you know what I mean? That's that's the numbers are going to line up to support whatever your ideology is.
And unfortunately, as you were talking, I was thinking about what I always call both plus one. So I can step out of, I'm a woman, I am black, and I'm a law enforcement officer. Well, retired now. Shout out to me. Yay, me. Retiring too early because, of course, I would have gone about 4 more years, but say for a drastic crash to my career. But a lot of those things were brought into the mix. I was made out to be a thug. I was from Compton. I put hands on a guy and assaulted someone while at work. I was walking around the office throwing up gang signs. I was telling people I'm from Compton and using that to intimidate people. And although you probably would say, yeah, you intimidate me at home, you'd say some kind of joke or wisecrack. Yeah.
I'm
At
scared.
work, no, you're not scared. At work, I was supposedly doing all of these things, mistreating people with disabilities. That literally was another claim. And it was almost like instantly, I can't win. I cannot win because the guys look at me like it's a woman and can she pack her mud? What is she going to bring to the table? Then I've got people looking at me like you grew up in a certain neighborhood. Are you going to be looking at the inmates when you're working in the streets? Are you going to be giving people kickbacks and not holding them accountable for crimes? And then I'm a law enforcement officer and I'm sorry. My community's saying you're a sellout. Why would you want to go and work
Right.
in that kind of agency when they're doing all of this craziness to people? And to a certain degree, I have to look at every single angle. And as a mother of three grown children who have to work and navigate in a world, I've had to have the talk. We've had the talk with our two sons and with our daughter and said, hey, this is what you do in the event that you get stopped. That is mind blowing to me. Still to this day, 30 years later, I have to actually walk different. I have to, adjust and you behave differently. And so when I step into the mind of a community member, I'm like, why? I don't I if I've done something wrong, it would just be me. I need to suffer the consequence. If I've committed a crime, I need to be held responsible. But if I haven't, and it's simply because I'm walking down the street, in one particular state, a stand your ground law that ended up a kid actually having his life taken because someone didn't want him walking around in the neighborhood. It astounds me how people cannot make the connection that every single person and human being on earth is not the same. Different experiences, different as people, and the same laws in the penal code book that work for one neighborhood or demographic are the same law. There's no penal code book that changes because of your race. There's no laws that are these laws are for these people here and then these laws are for those people over there. But yet there's this difference. There's okay, in the areas where there's crime, you make sure that you hit it hard, fast, and you make sure, like you say, the training. They don't get that training in the academy. A lot of times, if you don't get a good training officer, you get the one that's salty, that doesn't want to really teach you anything. He doesn't care about compassion, let alone community service. And there's a difference between community service, community engagement, community outreach. I can say that I sent deputies to this organization and they were there, and I'm a community member watching. Oh, the deputies showed up, but they're all standing in a huddle. They're not engaging with the kids. They're not here for this program. We checked the box. As a community member, I want to feel safe in my own neighborhood. I don't want to now be the person that's a suspect every time I turn a corner. And it was a lot of those reasons that I wanted to become an officer. I wanted to be something different, even if it was slight, even if the room shifted a little bit and now they say, hey, don't do that because Strong's not down with that kind of craziness. That's what I wanted to be to community members. So me putting myself in the mind of a community member, unfortunately, Eric, and I hate to share this, but it's the truth. I was offered drugs out of a patrol car.
I know you've told me many times. Can I just say this, that what you're saying right now is in the minds of community members. If police officers were to be in the minds of community members, have an understanding of why they may react the way that they do. Is it just because, or has there been a history? Is there a fatigue that we're tired of dealing with this? Is there a shared experience amongst many people in similar communities that says you treat us differently? I had a conversation with some gentlemen in the barbershop today, and one of the guys said he was from Cleveland. And I remember him saying, a black guy, he's from Cleveland, he doesn't know. He says, well, don't like 50% of, the people that live in these communities, aren't they all, felons? And like, don't they have he says, I don't know. I'm from Cleveland, but this is what I hear. And a couple of us said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I mean, maybe 5%, 10% of my, he's like, really? Are you think it's that? I said, dude, what is it that you think it is? I said, no, I mean, you're believing what the media shows you, and they only show you the bad part. They only show you the bad part. So, I would tell law enforcement, try to understand, listen, I'm tired. If I'm speeding, I'm speeding. And I've had this happen. Hey, get out of the car. No, write me a ticket for speeding. If I'm speeding, write me a ticket. But what are you
Yeah,
getting me out of the car for? Because
absolutely.
I want to conduct an investigation into what? Speeding? You got it. I was going faster than the speed limit. That's the investigation. But see, here's the thing when they talk about how many guns or how much drugs or how much they've recovered in a certain neighborhood, well, can you really do a comparison? And I'm just going to say two cities because I worked in both of them, right? No shade, no disregard, no anything, but Compton and Pasadena, I worked in both of them. If every time I stop somebody in Compton, I get them out of the car and I search the car, whether I have reason to or not, I find something, or five, let's say 1 out of 10 times I find something, I'm going to really believe that, hey, 1 out of every 10. But if every time I stop somebody in Pasadena, I never get them out of the car, I never search the car,
Mhm.
how would I ever find out if they have drugs or guns? Do you
Absolutely.
really think that?
100%.
Right. So you know what I mean? Your narrative is being supported by your actions, but your actions are not equal on both fronts.
Exactly. And there's no
So
laws specific to any one group of people. It's not like the penal code has a section for certain areas or
right.
people. It's the law is the law. So why is it differently? It's mishandled and used in different ways.
So
Where
right.
I was going was I had an officer offer me drugs. I was a senior in high school. And
Okay.
I saw a drug pass from a community member who was big in our neighborhood as a drug dealer, and a pass between the two of them. I'm walking by, minding my own business, and now I don't want to see this. So I'm like speeding up, walking on by to go past them. The officer slows the car, backs up, and is like rolling slow, talking to me. Hey, you want some? He's trying to give me a dime bag. I'm just being real. I, in my mind, growing up the way that I did in the minded community, dirty cop. Period. There's no excuse. There's nothing you could get me to look differently on. But I would tell people that gives me even more reason to say I need to be a part of a problem. Now, I didn't know that then in high school. That wasn't something that was just a dream of mine. But just that idea as a community member, what do you think my experiences, if they've all been negative, if I've been stopped for speeding, like you said, and now instantly I got to get out of the car and you're searching all through my stuff, who would want to be connected to that? But yet, the anger factor that people rightfully have, we're not addressing that. We're at the podiums talking about wellness. We're at the podiums talking about transparency and all these words that are just thrown out to make it sound good because you want people to go, wow, this person really cares. But are those caring things really happening? Or are we just glazing over things and using buzzwords to throw them out there to try to gain favor? Listening to some of these folks, and I've been kind of watching the people that are saying they want to take that top seat, and some of it is just, it's unheard of. A lot of it is just political rhetoric. I'm placating to a political party, and we're actually out of that argument in law enforcement. It's really sad, but that's where they're coming from. And as a community member, don't lie to me. Be honest with me. Tell me straight up what's going to happen and what in the world has changed. Is there any difference coming? That's what I want to hear. What is actually going to be the difference? I can see um, that we have some people in the chat and we have some things from some of the community members they were speaking to, and I'm wondering if they are able to still see my slides. I hope you can, because I have them set up special for you, but someone made the comment about the slides. So we're going to work on that. Make sure that we are able to clear that up. Then another was, what do you think are the most important issues facing the community regarding the LASD? So that question was posed by one of the people that are here actually in the audience. So, what do you think are the most important issues facing the community regarding the LASD? And then they actually answered from their perspective, since we're on the in the minds of the community. Um, I think accountability and community trust. That's what they basically say. What do you think are the most important issues facing the community? They're saying accountability and community trust. And that's from someone from the community saying exactly that. And for
I think
me,
that's, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, 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 please.
No, I would say I just want to add for anybody in the audience or anybody that's listening, even in the future, one of the things that is important to know when you talk about LASD, which means the LA County Sheriff's Department, that's very different from LAPD or any other municipal agency, is that LASD also runs the jails. And LASD
Hmm.
runs the largest jail system in the country. So I just want to make it clear if people don't know what LASD means. And I want to, just point out that when you talk about the community, we're also talking about those people when we're talking about LASD, those people that are incarcerated or being held in our jails.
Absolutely. And then there's the I think for us, it's not hearing and talking to each other. There's limited interaction between law enforcement and community. And the reason I say that is just what you were speaking to. When you have the people being pulled over or stopped, and in some communities, they have to get out of the car and, got to be shaken down and searched and everything that goes with it. And then in other communities, it's like, hey, you were speeding. Here's a ticket, press down because you're 3 copies and you're on your way. I don't think that there is a fair across the board, just let's stop with all of the craziness and assuming in some areas these are the problems and then in others these problems don't exist, and an equal playing field coming out of the gate. It's like you said, Eric. You stop someone for speeding, that's what you focus on in the speeding. Something else moves your attention. There, I mean, obviously, you see a gun sitting on the seat, then yeah, there's a safety aspect in that. Someone starts moving around and doing kind of crazy stuff. You're also an officer and you want to be safe. However, it's just having the baseline level of everything just being okay, a baseline level. For me, that's, and I'm hoping that I'm answering the person's question. If I am not, please drop in the chat more about that. But there are tons of important issues, hence us having these conversations. There's the issue of the isms, as I call the cousins. People don't like talking about it. It's taboo. You talk about sexism and racism and cronyism and nepotism, and no one wants to really have those conversations. Me being, again, one of all three sects or sections as a woman, a Black woman, and law enforcement, I get it from all sides. If that conversation bores someone, or, oh my God, here we go again, pulling the card, I say, I can't pull a card from a deck that's not extended to me. If you're extending that type of behavior to me, then I'm not going to immediately just say, oh, you're overthinking thing. Everything is about race. Here we go again. This same old conversation. But look at what's in the media. Look at what's being discussed. Look at the comments. People are talking about it. It is a conversation and it's one that we need to have.
Let me just add this to that. And that comment and that oh Lord always comes from people that don't experience what you experience.
Bingo.
So
Bingo.
they're tired of hearing about it, but they've never experienced it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You don't understand the depth of it
Mm.
if you've never experienced it and never will experience. That's where empathy comes in.
Yeah. I think it all is tied together to a common theme of the onus is on us as law enforcement officers. Well, me now retired, I don't know, it's not necessarily on me unless it's something that happens right there in front of me and I just can't let it go, which I still am in the mindset that I want to be able to help people. I really do. But it starts with what you always say, Eric, the paid professional. People on the street are not paid to be professionals. You said that for years, and you're like, we're the ones that have to make that first step of change and better. And I think that's what this platform is. It's us actually asking people, come and listen. Now come and join. Come and be a part of a solution if you can, because we need people's voices. We need to know those experiences that you had and it didn't turn out so well, and you were mistreated by someone in uniform. We need to know about those things. We really, really do. And so, hence, Code3 Conversations. We want to have these talks. And the more we have people coming aboard giving us talks, the person who said about what are the big important issues facing law enforcement today. In the media, there are certain key topics that are always, and you have one thing, and then all of a sudden something else comes along to knock it out of the park. And in my opinion, we don't address what's currently on the table because then it's just glazed over. Next thing you know, you have someone trying to outsmart well, I don't want anybody looking at this over here. So I'm going to now bring up this other subject over here. And the games are played and the strings are pulled, but nothing is really getting solved. There's not really anything that's being done that actually puts us in a better position. So, in the minds of community members, I get it. I didn't just get it now and retired. I got it wearing the uniform. I understood it. I remember having a particular partner tell me that, hey, you know what, can you roll over here? Because we're sitting over here talking to some of your cousins. Huh? Which cousins exactly? And of course, they were meaning people that look like me. And what am I doing? I'm running to go and actually talk. Here's why. I want to make sure that I make it to that area because in my mind, what is about to go down? Imagine
See,
if
and
we weren't.
people think that that's just a joke. It means nothing. But again, I'm just going by the things that you said. If I'm on Pasadena and I dealing with, let's just say, white people, would I call over white officers and say, "Can you come over here because I'm talking to your cousins?"
Never.
Would you say that?
Nope.
Would you say that? No, you wouldn't. You know what I mean? But you might do it in a predominantly Asian community if you had an Asian partner. You might do it in a predominantly Black community if you had a Black partner. And the fact that people don't see something wrong with that is part of the problem.
Yeah,
That's really part of the problem.
absolutely. And it becomes almost in the mindset a double dip, at least for me, that I'm thinking of my officer's safety, but fully immersed and engaged in the safety of whoever they're dealing with at that moment. What have you done before I show up? What have you said before and you should never, as an officer, have to go, here I go again with some partners that don't get it. But it happens all the time. And then you become, oh, well, you're not supporting the overall mission. Do you even know what the mission is? The mission is that ticket, the person was speeding and give them the ticket and let them go on their way. The mission is if a crime has been committed, it has a consequence, period. But it doesn't have a Black consequence, Asian consequence, Hispanic consequence. It doesn't have a specific consequence depending on who you're dealing with. And those are the conversations that honestly nobody wants to have. We're busy pointing fingers. The popo, they should have complied. That's the basis of everything that we're always constantly speaking to. So we only get there by a conversation, literally. And if you're good with it, we're going to move on to the next topic. What you thinking?
Let's do it.
Let's
Let's hit
go.
it. Go.
Code3 Conversations. And for those of you who say that you are not able to actually see the slides, in the final product, you'll be able to go back. But I am more interested in you hearing what we're speaking about and then engaging, if you'd like, by letting us know what's going on. This is not one of those things where I don't want to address, especially if you're sending me a message. So keep it coming. And I like the banter and I like the hey, the tap on the shoulder to let me know what's going on. How can the community help to better understand law enforcement officers? I added that last word, but it says law enforcement. So how, if you were talking to somebody and if I was thinking about how I would help them to understand law enforcement, please, I would start this way. Please, please know that just like all people are not the same, all officers are not the same. There are plenty of us who care about what is happening. Trust me on that. It is a bold move to look like me and wear a uniform. I know a lot of people wouldn't want to say that, and they're like, it's not that big of a deal. Oh my goodness. What is she talking about? But it's the truth. Me walking in every day, putting that uniform on, it was a double dip because I had to make sure that I was top notch in my uniform, that I was ready, that I had the knowledge of the policies. And it wasn't something that I was an applicant. What do you say, Eric? I wasn't an applicant A. I was an applicant B. And it didn't come easy for me with me having very humble beginnings. And I'm proud of that. And I am happy to say that I would like others who are like that to be a part of this mission. I'm always talking to young people. Please apply if you're even having an inkling of working in law enforcement. We do need you because last I checked, the numbers of people that look like me dropped to what was it, Eric? 5%? Is that the current numbers within LASD? And where did that
Sheriff's
drop
Department,
from?
yeah, it's probably 5 or 6%. We were in the double digits, probably around 12, you know,
Mm,
maybe 13, at the peak. But yeah, last I checked, it was probably around 5%. And if we're not hiring anymore, or if we're hiring very little, those 5% are eventually going to matriculate their way out through retirement or, you know what I mean, or going elsewhere. So those numbers are just going to
absolutely.
continue to go down.
Absolutely. And I have someone who is actually raising their hand to join in. Looks like a familiar face. So I am bringing her over. And you had your hand raised. If you are wanting to, ma'am, please unmute and tell us what you're thinking.
Hi, you guys. I just had a question. That's a good question right there. But do you guys remember community relations? Each station had a community relations office, and you
Yes,
remember how they were required to go to neighborhood watch meetings. They also had, do you remember community academies where they had
yes,
so many people come in and they had speakers from the DA's
Citizens
office. They
Academy.
had
Yep.
Yeah, they had speakers at DA's office. They had speakers from different parts of the sheriff department. Plus, they did what do you not drills, but they had the community pull over a vehicle, or they had, what do you call that? Not a drill, but where they act like they're
Scenarios.
scenarios.
mm,
There you go. Thank you, Eric. What am I doing? Um, Something's on my screen. Okay. And that I know helped with, because you had more people calling in things, and I know it helped with the crime stats, but I don't know if they lost that or if they still have that. That I think the people getting involved, like, and they loved it. The public loved it. And it grew to where there were so many people getting involved from word of mouth, that they were conducting those kind of academies and stuff, getting involved with community relations
I
office.
remember them very well because I remember it not happening at one of the stations where I worked when I was a sergeant. And I brought it back and we
Hmm.
actually made it a little more incorporating too with the community, what do they call them? Neighborhood watch. So the
Neighborhood
neighborhood watch meetings, we would actually have them and we would host them on one of the days during the month. And then we'd have the community academy. And it was usually coinciding with, it would be first that neighborhood watch group come in. They could also be one of the first ones to actually sign up and they could come through the community academy. But you are absolutely correct. It at least gave people a glimpse of what was happening. And as a young deputy, we did it with one of the custody assistants. She and I partnered, and we had a community academy for custody. So we actually
Mm,
brought people in and they got a tour of the jail. They got to
hmm.
go to the range
Right.
that we had on location. And it was hugely accepted. They came back and they're just
Hmm.
like, we didn't even know that this is what officers deal with.
Right.
Like they didn't have the understanding, like our topic, they didn't know and realize so many officers what they actually deal with on the inside. And
Absolutely.
it's not a this is not a Crimea River, but that's a tough, you're working double shifts. You're
Right.
dealing with some of the worst of the worst. Because think about it, law enforcement is not just the warm and fuzzy. Usually, if you're going to someone's home or you're dealing with what's going on in custody, it's not the best situations. It's not
Right.
like I'm going to work and I'm going to be putting together the flower arrangements. And no slight to people who work in floral stores. Please know that I didn't say that as a slight, but I don't get
Right.
to stand there and smell roses all day. I'm
Exactly.
smelling, sadly, feet in the jail. Sometimes people I put in the back seat and they haven't bathed in a long time and they may have committed a crime. It's not that you're dealing with the best of the best, but I think that funnel of who's being pushed into those systems is a real key. That's a whole nother conversation, like who you're ended up dealing with and how you handle them as people overall. But yeah, the community academies, you're absolutely correct. I think they were very, very successful. And I don't know that anybody's still doing those.
I don't either.
To go to your point, about the way the slide reads, I don't know what happened there, but the slide went away. But the way the question reads, trying to go back to, why can't
You
I see?
can't see my slide. Is that what you're
Okay,
saying?
no, it popped up. It just said Leslie's name. How can the community help to better understand law enforcement? So I'm assuming that what we're saying is what can the community do to better understand law enforcement, right?
Right.
And I think the point you were bringing back is those citizens academies were very valuable. But if we don't have them, if we're not offering anymore, then what can the community do?
Right.
I think the community can call and ask for those. I think, but here's what happens in the both positive and negative. If somebody has a negative encounter with law enforcement, they just came home and law enforcement pulled them over and all they were doing was speeding, or maybe they just barely cruised through, but they took them out and they set them on a curb for 45 minutes and it was cold and it was rainy and they searched their car and tore their car up. What happens right after that? What happens? The
Here.
person goes home
Mhm.
or gets on the phone. When they
Oh,
walk in the door, people say, "Where you been?" "Oh, let me tell you what happened." And they tell everybody, and it's like, "What?" And then, while the sister or the mom is on the phone with the auntie and the friends, and they hear it too. So, basically the word spreads like wildfire. And then everybody starts, "Oh, you know what? That happened to me a couple of weeks ago."
Right.
Well, same thing I noticed with the community when we had the citizens academies and also when we had the clergy academy. That was another thing
Mm-hmm.
that we used to use. And the clergy used to, come around. And the reason we had the clergy academy, I was one of the coordinators there, was that we would bring clergy members in and they would also get educated on some of the things we did, why we did, and they had a forum to ask questions about particular incidents. So
Right.
what were they able to do? They were able to take that back to
Spread the
their
word.
congregations and say, "Hey, everybody, I know that you see things this way, but maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
another aspect of this. There's another side of this." And the same thing with those citizens academies. I know firsthand that, those citizens that were going through those citizens academy would have somebody come and tell them, because I remember them, sharing this. We did a citizen academy one time. Um, hey, this is what happens. And you have somebody who's got a little bit inside information. Well, hold on, wait a minute. Let me just tell you, I went through the Citizens Academy, and the reason that they did it was because, or it could be this, you got to see. And so we can magnify the good messages as much as we can. We can amplify the good messages as much as we can, the bad ones. And those things are very important. And I think they're,
Very.
I call it the community collaboration committee, or
Mm-hmm.
community collaboration coalition, or some of the things that we should have. But another thing that I want to add is that how can the community, or what can the community do to better understand law enforcement, is from the community side, is understand that because you see people that look the same, dress the same, drive the same car, they have the same uniform, they have the same equipment, they're not robots. They're
mhm.
Right.
still people. Don't look at them as like they're robots, and they're still people with feelings and fears and frustrations and stressors. And, they're people that want to go home and see their families. There are
Mhm.
people that sometimes just had a big argument. They might be somebody that's mad because they're missing their, their kid's little league game that one day right there while they're at that ship, and it's the championship game, and you know what I mean? And they did everything they could to promise their kid to be there. Because remember, law enforcement, another way you can help, better understand them is they're 365, 24/7. There's
Mhm.
somebody always out there at Christmas, on New Year's Eve, on Easter, on Thanksgiving, every holiday you could think of, while most people that work a 9 to 5 are enjoying the holidays. And if you're young and you know what I mean, you just happen to have those days off, you miss a lot of them, not just
Right.
one. You miss them for years. And for years, you don't have that weekend off. So you may have to continue to tell your kids, hey, we're going to celebrate your birthday on Thursday
Mhm.
because that's my day off. And the babies or the kids are like, I want to celebrate it on Saturday when all the other kids celebrate their birthday, when all of my friends can come, because on Thursday they're in school and after school they got homework. So there are stressors that come into a law enforcement officer's life that you need to realize that a lot of people don't have to deal with. They have they have spouses, they have partners, they might have an argument. They may have just found out that, a loved one, a grandparent, a parent, or somebody is ill, or maybe even, passed away or in the hospital. So all of the things that go on in life, they experience it too.
Mhm.
So, and it's not an excuse. And as CC said earlier, they're the paid professionals. Yes, we have to figure out a way to put, to separate that. But the reality of it is we're still human. We can be short, we can be snappy. Now, it doesn't excuse just being disrespectful, rude. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And what we were talking about earlier about, having a stressed out home life does not make you pull a certain race in a certain community out of the car every time and you don't do it elsewhere. That's not the I'm not excusing that, but
Yeah.
understand that sometimes they're dealing with something too. And
Right.
I think if we all look at each other as just regular human beings, we'd
Right.
be a lot better off on both sides.
And so it brought to mind when I was working with Metro Rail. And unfortunately, and I hate any time that I hear about someone ending their own life, but a man was depressed and stepped in front of one of the trains. I remember so much buzzing around and so many things going around with all of the cars, and everybody's there in the investigation. And, they're making sure that they're trying to keep the community where people can't see the person. And, pretty much it was, you can imagine there's sheets everywhere covering it.
Mhm.
Horrible scene. And imagine being that law enforcement officer rolling up on that,
Mhm.
and other scenes, where we can't even recognize that it was a person. That's how bad it is. And I hate to put it that way, but the truth. And as I'm standing there and I'm looking up at the train operator, everyone's like asking her 50 million questions, and she just looked frazzled. I remember climbing up into the train, into that box with her, and sitting and hugging her. Now, yes, I had a job to do in that moment, but as I sat there and hugged her, I didn't know at that moment what I was doing for her. And it wouldn't
Mhm.
be a few weeks later, she would come to the station and bring a bunch of Marie Callender pies.
Mhm.
And they're like, hey, there's a lady looking for you. And my last name, she goes, Sherrod, she's looking for you. And I go out to the front and she says, you'll never know what you did for me. She said, I wanted to hate law enforcement officers. I don't have nothing to do with them because I lost a brother in a shooting. They just
Mhm.
dismissed it like it was no big deal. She was angry and didn't want to like a law enforcement officer, but me taking that first step to be human, the piece you're
Mhm.
talking about, Eric, not assuming that all law enforcement officers are bad because of what you see in the media. You haven't seen this face in the media. Not in a bad way. Like a couple television shows, if my face looks familiar. However, you haven't seen me wearing my uniform and my badge with ill behavior. And just as much as I wouldn't want people to assume that I am a certain way because of the way I look, I don't want to be assumed to be a bad officer because there are some officers that, yes, are out there doing really bad stuff,
Right.
period. It's almost suspending for a minute and giving me a chance because you don't know yet. You don't know who you're dealing yet. And we have so many biases and hangups. And again, I pay your salary, so you need to do what I say, and you work for me after all. And what does that really solve? And then he should have just complied. Well, were you doing all the steps that you were supposed to as an officer? What is it? What is you being the big bad bravado and not using the scale to calm the waters? Because you're in someone's home and they just had an argument with their spouse. Because I'm telling you, when Eric and I argue, I don't really want to have an officer in my living room telling me what to do because my neighbor called. How dare they call on us? And we've never had, thankfully, I've never experienced that. But to have a neighbor call, you're now standing in this person's living room. They don't want you there. You've been called there, so you have a job to do, but they're high level 10, they're upset. They're angry. And now you're walking in that zone, like Eric said. I'm 23 years old, and now I'm coming in solving the problem of people who've been married for 30 years.
Mm.
What am I actually telling them other than I can't have you guys fighting each other? And wait a minute, she's got bruises on her. So that means I got to take you in. Or wait a minute, she did that to herself. Oh no, he did something to me too. And now you're deciding whether they're both going to go or what's going to happen according to the law. And as a young officer, it's new for you, but I'm going to also put it on what are we feeding into the younger people? What are we as the older people showing them of how to do the job? And then when they make a mistake, not just scoffing it off because, hey, we all stick together. If you make a mistake, hey, pull my gun belt. Tell me that I said something wrong. Oh, curse word slipped out of my mouth and it shouldn't have in someone's living room. And now I'm mad because they complain. Oh, get over it. That's kind of like the same get over the idea of the whole racism piece. How can I get over it? I look at me like I can't change this. This is what God gave me. And I didn't order from a menu who I was born into. I will stick to that constantly. That we don't choose who we're born into. So why do we choose so much hatred? And how dare we choose hatred wearing a uniform? That's true talk. I don't even understand it. And when we bring politics into the mix, and now it's all about one particular political party, and it's weaponized, that's a problem. That is also a real big problem, especially in the media, because that's where all, or I should say social media, that's where all those hot topics are. So yeah, I went off on a tangent with that, but please understand that there are officers out there that are in it for the right reasons. And I like to know that I made a huge difference and I watched it. I saw differences being made in fellow officers, but you just won't see those highlights. You you don't get the headlines for that. It just doesn't happen. So with that being said, I wanted to actually address if it is hard for anyone to see the slides sometimes, and it doesn't have to be the case. If you are watching from a cell phone, that can actually create the minimizing of things. I don't know if that's the case, so don't quote me on that, but I just wanted to make sure that I address that. I am of the philosophy that any concern that's brought up, we need to actually try to see if we can fix it. These are also going to be available and you will have the notices if you're tracking with this. I would ask you at this point, make sure you go and like and subscribe my channel. It's CC Strong on YouTube and you can subscribe there and I'll give you some other follow information later on, but I just wanted to drive that point home. You can go back and look at the other episodes as well. So with that being said, if you are all good with it, I'm going to have us move ahead to our last topic for the evening. And it is what happens now after hearings about deputy gangs? What an interesting question. The hearings have been, and there's a report that came out. So what happens? My honest answer, I have absolutely no idea because I have the same question that this question from the community and a comment came from. I really don't know. I would think that since it's been deemed, according to the report that I read through, it came from the Community Oversight Commission. Am I saying that correctly, Eric? Community, it was COC.
Civilian Oversight Commission.
Civilian Oversight Commission. I'm so sorry. Thanks for correcting me. I just call them the COC. But they did all of these and had all these people on the stand. You can go back and watch it on YouTube. They went through all of these people on the witness stand talking about whether it does exist and whether it doesn't exist. And those who were connected to it, quite honestly, I saw them say that no, they downplayed it. Come on, let's not talk about those things. It's not that big of a deal. It's a team, it's camaraderie, it's a brotherhood, it's every excuse for it. So I don't know. My thoughts are in answering this question, what happens now? We need an overhaul. We need a reset.
Well,
And this kind of behavior shouldn't be tolerated if it is actually fits now what they have as an actual code and a definition.
well, I can tell you, to be quite honest and to be quite candid, um, nothing happens
Mhm.
because here's what we have. We had a very loud, toxic, disruptive sheriff that brought a lot of energy and attention to this matter just by his actions,
To say that
you
on a
know,
repeat.
by his rhetoric and all of that. And so now what we have is we have a sheriff that hasn't made any changes. He's just quieted the noise. And he's
Mhm.
like, hey, listen, if we just put our head in the sand, people will eventually forget about it. It'll go away. But just because we quiet the noise, that doesn't mean that something good is happening. That does not mean that change has been affected. That does not mean that, you
Absolutely.
know, so, if you come out and you just said, hey, you know what, I put together a policy. We put a policy out, you can't be in a deputy gang. And I take that policy and I put it in the book. And I take that policy and I put it in the volumes and volumes of other policies that are out there, but I never actually speak to it and address it. Sure, a little video, an email comes out, says, hey, here's a new policy. It's bad. Don't do it
Mhm.
because now we have a policy. Is that really going to create any reform or change? Is that going to change a mindset when you still have a lot of people in leadership positions that came from some of those very um, cliques, gangs,
Oh,
tattoos, whatever you want to call
Mhm.
it? We still have them in leadership positions. And if we are foolish enough to think that they got some ink on their leg, two things. If we're foolish enough to think that they got some ink on their leg and they've had this great epiphany, all of them, maybe some have, but they've had this great epiphany that, oh my gosh, what I was doing all these years was bad, awful, and terrible. And I'm going to now hold people accountable
Mhm.
for this. They're not, because you know what, they're gonna justify by saying, well, I can't be a hypocrite. I need to give them a break. I need to understand, I
Mhm.
was them when I was young. That's number one. Number two is I
Right.
keep hearing of all of these. I've heard of several times people got the tattoo covered or they got it
mm,
removed. Okay, guess what? If you got it covered, it's still there. You just can't see it as well because you got to look real close. But does covering a tattoo change a mindset? You know what I mean? Or
or
did you
what you
or
already
did you
did.
right, because it doesn't change what you already did.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, you covered it because you now know that people are looking for it. They're asking about it. And if you want to stay in good graces, if you want to get promoted, if you want to move up the ranks, if you don't want to be the person that gets called in on a deposition, that's why
True.
you covered it. Not necessarily because if you come out and denounce it, come out
Right.
publicly and say, I was wrong. I did this. I was one of the founders. I was one of the people that perpetuated this. And I'm telling you, be like the guy that, we asked. So here's what, just for people know, we've had people that have been involved in terrible car crashes because they were speeding or going too
Mm,
fast. Guess what they do? They become spokespersons for not doing that. We've
Mhm.
had people that have been involved in, driving under the influence. Guess what they do? They become the spokesperson against that. I haven't seen not one person come and be the spokesperson against
Mhm.
being in a deputy gang, a deputy clique, but because guess what? They just want to
wow.
shovel it. They want to shovel it up underneath the rug. They want to sweep it up underneath there and bury it and act like it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. But to the point, what happens now after hearings about deputy gangs? Nothing, because the leadership is not going to do anything.
Wow. You know what? Your analogy about those, and I remember a guy at one of the stations that I worked, he had to come in and give the training because he actually had a DUI. When you
Yep.
just said that, I came to
Yep.
my memory,
Been
but
a
I'm
few of
going
them.
to tie it to the first slide. When we talk about that person that's the candidate A or candidate one, and then candidate B or candidate A, one, two, whatever numbers. This person over here and this person over there. When we talk about that, and coming full circle now, a person with a DUI in uniform is now teaching about the DUIs because of an experience.
Right.
So wouldn't we want, not necessarily saying that people could have DUIs and it's like, yeah, come on in, you got 3 DUIs and we want you to wear a uniform. I'm not saying that, but it speaks to the knowledge and experience of not so good. And you haven't learned a lesson about things, or that one person who is from that single parent home, but has some life experience, not
Right.
everything handed to them in a graduation card with a bow on it. And the credit is great because mom and dad gave you a credit card when you were 16 and now you can go out and build your credit. It's it's the whole mindset. When you said that, I was like, wow, because that's a bar. That is a whole chapter in a book, if not a book itself. That we do have people who have gotten in trouble come back and they're teaching why this is wrong internally, but
Right.
no one's actually saying, hey, I was in a deputy gang. I mean, one of the guys on the witness stand was the chief of staff. He was a second in command with the sheriff, and he said, yeah, I had tattoo number 21 or whatever the number that he ended up calling, coughing up on himself. But this is the same guy that walked into a room full of us and said there was a whole lot of arrogance in the room. And we supervisors, lieutenants and above, we needed to be checked and put in our place. I get it. You're the hard charging officer. You want to be a gunslinger. You want to be hard and tough. But the sad part about it is, Eric, and I'm going to lean on something you said. It is coming from people that actually didn't grow up in the neighborhoods like I did. They have no idea about what gang banging really was and walking through it, walking home just to get to my house. They have no
Having a fight
idea.
just to get home.
A basic fight, being in a fight. I had a friend unfortunately gunned down right in front of me as a teenager. They've never had those experiences. They don't know, but you want to be now in a deputy gang. Let's put a pin in that for a minute.
But
You want to
something
be
that
in
you
a
said,
gang, just like the gangsters on the street want to
yes,
belong. And you're
yes,
looking to connect to something,
yes.
but you're
Two
doing
things I
it
want
through
to
the
say.
uniform.
Two things I want to say, because I
Go
don't want
ahead.
to get this too far away. You just said they want to be, what did you say? Tough and
They want to
hard,
be
and
gunslingers and
they want to be
hardcore
gunslingers,
and
hardcore. Key thing, they want to be something that they're not. That's why
absolutely.
they want to be it. They want to be seen as the tough, but they're not. They want to be seen as the cool, but they're not. So when you're not something and you want to be it, what are you going to do? You're going to go extra hard in the paint to try to earn that image or that title of whatever it is. And that right there, you just hit it,
Sure
is
did.
they want to be.
Yes.
And so
And
when
back
you
where
want
I
to
grew
be,
up,
kind of like our old sheriff, he was a want to be that never
boom,
could. And so what
boom.
did he do? And
And
yet,
people in the community, I'm sorry, Eric, but people in the community believe him to be a gangster. Could you imagine? And some background about somebody, and
right,
he's a wannabe, and they rejected him. So now he becomes the sheriff, and now he's going to have them be the focal point of everything. And now it's the Banditos gang from East LA because they didn't accept me back then. I was wearing a kick me sign and getting bullied. And now
yep,
I'm going to now be their Lord and leader. But the community ate it up that he was somehow a gangster himself. And guess what? He's loving that. I was part of the gang. His current speech with his announcement that he's running again doesn't say the same. It's a total flip flop of everything that you said the first time around. And he was a wannabe. I'm just sorry. That's exactly what it was.
and as somebody that actually did an investigation into a huge incident, probably one of the largest within the department,
Oh, I remember that.
where
Mhm.
deputies are jumping on,
Other
and I
deputies.
call it the gangster stop. In other words, 3 or 4 deputies are punching one deputy, knocking him to the ground, and then using their foot and stomping on them like what we the epitome of what gangsters do, and then you want to sit up there and say there's no deputy
Absolutely.
gangs. Heck,
Mhm.
deputies are assaulting deputies.
Yes.
And we don't think that they're gonna, and we want to sit up there and say, oh, that would never happen in the community. Deputies don't do that. Are you kidding?
Yes. And the
Deputies
Mhm.
are
snitch term.
assaulting deputies. And
Don't
and
Mhm.
and
snitch
all
on
these
another
people that are
deputy.
all of these people that are always touting deputy, deputy, go deputy, I'm pro deputy, rah, rah deputy. Why aren't you saying, hey, there's something wrong with the deputies assaulting deputies?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's the part that I
absolutely.
have. You know what I mean? If you want to be pro deputy and pro law enforcement and say, oh, they never do anything wrong, everything they do is justified, there's always a reason for it. You know, we need to understand. You don't know what they go through. Okay, you know what? Stick with your theory, stick with your argument there. But how are you going to justify that when they're doing the same thing to other law enforcement officers now? Because
Yeah,
that means you're not supporting somebody that's got the
yeah.
uniform and the badge
And
on.
I was
That's
looking for
Mhm.
support with my situation. Like, where's all the
Mhm.
outcry now that I was deemed disciplined without just cause and my contractual rights were violated and a
Right.
fake case was put on me? Where are all these officers that get behind everybody and say this was wrong and this person
Mhm.
shouldn't have gone through this? Not a peep.
Yeah.
right.
Not a peep. I
Right.
got some support,
Of course.
some people that are diehard supporters of me, and I love them for it. But there's no rally around that, and that is blatant and it's documented. And I've been documenting it since it happened. But you don't have that outcry.
So,
You have a lot of outcry for particular people. I'm sorry, Leslie, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
oh, I didn't know you could see me. But no, you guys are so smart because you hit right on the whole psyche of getting involved in those bad games. We were just somebody, I was talking to somebody about this as far as the Proud Boys, and they were asking me, one of the head leaders is Hispanic. Why would he be in the Proud? And they were saying how basically, they either somebody bullied them, and when they were, younger, it's a psychological thing, or trying to be something that they're not. But it's something from it's a psychological thing to even join something bad like you did. You just said it, Cedra. You hit it right on
Yeah,
the head.
you can't. How are
Interesting.
you arresting people in the streets, but your behavior mirrors people in the streets?
Right.
How is anything holding up that you did? Any arrest, anything that you've said? So when the question is, what happens now? Well, you already had some cough up on themselves. What about their cases? What about all the stuff that they've done over the year? Does it wipe away everything that they've done? I would say
Mm,
yes. As
mm,
sad as that
People in
is
the
to
street.
say, the consequences are not just to those who have committed the crimes in the streets, but the ones who have committed crimes internally.
right.
Consequences are consequences, and they're like the penal code. Consequences shouldn't have a color, a shape, a size, a height, none of that. It's a consequence.
Some of these very people that we're talking about that are have these tattoos and have been part of this, and I can attest to this, having worked in internal affairs, that will say, well, this person tried to destroy the evidence.
Mm,
So in turn,
Mm,
you planted evidence?
mm,
How does that work?
mm,
You know what I mean? So, well, this person, they lied. So in turn, you write a false police report?
mm,
So you just said it. They're doing the exact same activity that the person is in the street is doing. And in some way, shape, or form, they've justified it that, theirs is for the good of all. And that's why we're doing it. We're trying to make the community
right.
safer. No, you're not. You're basically, and then here's the other thing I'm going to say, and I always say this. Um, One of the most important things that a deputy or a law enforcement officer does, he goes and he talks to people. You go to a traffic accident, you go to people, tell me what happened. You find
Mm,
witnesses, you
yeah.
say, tell me what happened. You go to a crime, you go to the victim, hey, what happened? Hey, you go to the witnesses, hey, what happened? And you're trying to tell people, hey, I need you to tell me what happened so I can help make you safer. Because if you tell me what happened and I know who did it, then I can go get them and I can get them off the street and they won't do it to somebody else. We
mm,
constantly are talking to people, getting them to tell us what happened. But what's the first thing that happens as soon as they say, hey, what did your partner do?
mm,
I didn't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm,
I'm not a snitch. I'm not going to tell it. So you're trying, the whole premise of your job in a sense is writing reports and writing what people told you, and you're asking people to tell you what happened. But when somebody comes to you and asks you what happened, you want to say, "Oh, I'm protected. I'm not saying anything. I plead the fifth, or I got bar. You didn't give me my subject rights." It really just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. And I go to this. Those people that, I know it's a joke, and I know we hear, "Oh, snitches get stitches," you know what I mean? And we've heard it growing up, "Don't be a tattletale." Let me just say this about that term. It is a jailhouse term.
Absolutely.
I'm going to use this. It is a propaganda where I can hit somebody over the head. I can knock an old lady down, take her purse, and harm her. But I've got you convinced that if you say, "Hey, it was Eric that did it," you're worse than I am.
Hmm.
Really?
Hmm.
And how many
Hmm.
people in today's day and age, whether you're in the streets, on the streets, a criminal, a gangster, you got people that are just in the regular old everyday workforce that, "Oh, snitches get stitches," and they think it's a joke.
Right.
They think
Yeah.
it's a joke. No, it's not. The right thing is not always the popular thing. The popular thing is not always the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't you don't pick and choose, you
Yeah.
know.
And two things popped into mind. There was a unit that was put together internally to do investigations. And the leading person was one of the people during the deputy gang hearings. And his whole, I mean, he's there dancing around. I don't recall. But he's seen on camera hiding food for an inmate in the jails.
Mhm.
Same person. And then you have one of the assistant sheriffs who actually says that investigators in from the homicide, I believe it's from homicide unit, they plead the fifth. They took the fifth. In answering about an investigation, in answering about a crime, like now I'm not going to get on the witness stand and tell the truth as an officer, and you as an assistant sheriff are okay with them. You publicly said this is nothing, that is something behind the scenes, because this is all in video and you can pull it up. It's sad that the idea of not snitching, and I can't stand that term, because if you step on my toe and I say ouch, I'm not a snitch, you shouldn't have stepped on my toe. If people were doing the right thing, and it's the best of your ability, because none of us are perfect, but if you aspire to do the right thing, you're less worried about somebody telling on you. I'm wearing a body worn camera. I'm not caring what you're going to see, because I'm not going to do people dirty and mistreat them. I don't make it a habit of using foul language in uniform. I'm not going to say I don't use curse words, but there's a level of respect. There's a level of honor. I put that uniform on. I put that badge on. I saw it differently. I didn't see it as now I can wield and lord over everybody and they were to bend to my will, because they still have a free will as a human being. And there's a safety component of that just because I told you to stop and freeze and get on the ground and put your hands around your back, what happens when you don't do it? My 0 to 10, when I used to be a DI at the academy, I would tell the recruits, you have a 0 and all the way up to 10. If you draw your gun and tell someone, if you open your mouth again, I'm going to shoot you, and they don't say anything, but they open and close their mouth almost like a fish, are you going to shoot them? You've already taken out every other thing that you could use in your toolbox, and you went straight to deadly force.
Right.
You didn't even give it a chance. And you're so worried about being respected, and they disrespected me. That's also a term like the streets. Gangbangers don't want to be disrespected either. How about we as human beings don't want to have you disrespecting me? And you're a fool. I'm sorry to say it that way. If you don't use the gift of gab, de-escalation, getting people to do what you want them to do or need them to do in other means other than look at this badge, look at this uniform, I'm the law, so you better bend to me. You look stupid when they don't comply. You really do. Not when I could have said, hey, this is the case, this is what it is. I didn't, commit the crime. I don't have to beat you over your head while I'm taking you to the booking to the station. I don't have to mistreat you because you're incarcerated. My job is not to now host court while in the jails, and I'm going to give you your sentencing. That has absolutely nothing to do with me in that moment. I can't be the judge, the jury, and the prosecutor and the defense attorney. I can't do those. Those are not my roles. But all too often we step into those roles and we have an expectation of people from the community that we're not willing to hold our partners to.
Mm.
How do I not hold my partners accountable? Am I okay with them doing wrong and me not saying anything about it? And where are all the people complaining now that I have proven that I didn't do what they said I did? Where's the outcry, the public outcry about that? That's a clean example of being mistreated and nobody's coming to the rescue. I
Right.
would hope it's not that card that I just pulled from that deck that I can't pull from unless it's handed to me. I really would hope that because I don't have any outcry in that. So, with that being said, this is amazing. And this conversation is getting more and more robust, and we are really enjoying having the discussions. And we thank you, Leslie, for coming aboard and joining with us. I'm going to ask that those of you who attended, please connect with me, please. And if you have a heart piece, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find these episodes on YouTube, and everything is basically under CC Strong, CEE Strong.com is my website where you can read more about my story. I am law enforcement officer, cosmetologist, business owner, international speaker, author of now 3 books, and I have 30 years in law enforcement. And even though I could go off into the sunset, I am choosing to do what I'm doing now. And that's working with people to help them have the bubble wrap that I did by being an amazing documenter. And I don't let too many things slip by me. I track and make sure that I am doing things the way that I am supposed to. And I like to think that I made a huge difference as I was able to observe with my husband as well. I thank you for
Thank
actually
you.
being here and being a part of our program for this evening. So please follow me. I'm not trying to become an influencer. I'm trying to get the information out there. Follow me on all of those. And don't forget, you do have an opportunity to join my think tank. I would love to have more discussions with you, and we take this even further. If you have a topic that you'd like to be a featured topic on our Code 3 Conversations, we are here every second and fourth Wednesday of every single month. The link that got you here will get you that actual code and the link to get into any of the other ones that we have. So we will be seeing you again on September 10th. And if you are wanting to be in the think tank, follow along with the information that will be followed up with you through your email. And actually join me next time for an hour before the actual Code 3 Conversations. We're going to dig into the think tank. You'll learn more about me. I'll learn more about you. And we will start to build this bridge to have the necessary Code 3 conversations. I thank you, Eric, for always lending all of your wealth of knowledge. And Leslie, thank you for
Thank you guys so much.
raising your hand. And
Thank you.
please share this with others. Please make sure that you would actually share this with other people. Invite them in. As you can see, you can just eat your snacks, bring your drinks, and hang out with us for an hour and a half as we have the hard, tough Code 3 conversations. We'd like to thank you for attending, and we'll see you next time. Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.